right, welcome to this week's episode of Voices in Hyperspace. I am Legendary Black Lion.
I'm Mel Asylum.
Nita, and I like to paint.
Yes. So this week's episode is In the Sky Full of Stars, which honestly, it sounds like the title sounds like the end of a poem or the end of a song. You know, is being very melodramatic. Which I mean, when is sci-fi not melodramatic?
When it's goofy.
Yeah, but even in the goofiness, it's like they tend to be a little melodramatic. But there is a very specific like 90s aesthetic to it. Everybody thought that they were rewriting Shakespeare when they were doing 90s sci-fi. Mm-hmm. I mean, even if you read like early 90s comic books, early 90s X-Men Avengers, it's almost unbearable now from the way that these characters speak. I'm like, no one ever spoke in real life like these characters are speaking. And so this is, it's J. Michael Straczynski. I kind of feel like some of the, we talked about this other creator, the creator of the Whedonverse, and he likes to play around with dialogue and language with the different characters, which comes across pretty cool. The characters are always awkward, socially awkward, or awkward with their words. Firefly, they developed a really interesting like speech pattern, but that was part of the world building.
Yeah,
and it was kind of cool to hear them speak in English but curse in Chinese. So like seeing that happen, when did Firefly come out? That was in the early 2000s, right?
Let's see.
Oh, okay.
Where's my computer?
Go gadget Google.
Was it 2004? Hold on, let me look.
Well, I'm seeing 2005.
2005?
Okay. The film came out, Serenity came out 2005.
Okay. Oh, so the series was 2002 to it says 2002, 2003. It was one season.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, I don't care who knows. Gina Torres is my celebrity crush. She is gorgeous. She ticks a lot of boxes. She's tall. Sorry. All right. So, in the Sky Full of Stars. So this one was like a world building episode, and there were some breadcrumbs thrown all throughout this episode. You don't get much movement as far as the overall story. There's one really big thing that happens at the end of the episode that tells you like, oh, so this character is progressing and that's going to affect the story later, but this is happening now during this episode. So a couple of the breadcrumbs. So basically this episode is about Sinclair's memory of the last battle, the last part of the Battle of the Line. And he's basically connected to this torture chair, and he's being forced to relive his memories. But some interesting things happen. There is a point where you can hear a Vorlon voice say there is a hole in your mind, and that kind of gives the reveal that his memory was erased. There is also I don't mind spoiling it at this point because you're gonna find like there's a whole lot doesn't happen during. Not a whole lot happens during this episode, so I'll just go ahead and like jump around. So Delenn pops up throughout the episode in like some of the oddest parts, but all of that is to say, hey, she has something to do with this, and Sinclair's memory places her in the chamber of the Great Council, and honestly, that's connecting breadcrumbs that were laid in past episodes. Remember, they were like. When she was talking to Lanier, like, hey, don't let anyone hear you call me Satai. No one's supposed to. I'm part of the Great Council. No one's supposed to know that. Mm-hmm. So we are finally having her secret revealed to us, the audience. And by the end of the episode, Sinclair knows too. And I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, the same. He got some verification on what he thought he heard before when in the episode you mentioned, but they just kind of like made it it didn't have to be as long as it was, but they did a good
What
job
was it,
of
like four
doing.
or five episodes or something like that?
Yeah, well, even just this episode, and then throwing in the whole side quest with the security being tampered with because of his gambling. It was a nice lead into it. Instead of like these guys just here to come get him. Because these episodes rarely have just one storyline that they follow. There has to be more than one. But this one really only had the two, and they were very much connected.
Yeah. Another breadcrumb. This was something that you had to like really pay attention to a background thing. So Garibaldi is reading the paper, and bravo for J. Michael Straczynski thinking people are going to be reading newspapers in space. I mean, I remember one time in my youth, I had a newspaper subscription, and I was like, I am keeping up with things in the world, and that is not what newspapers do, or that's not what they did. But Garibaldi is reading the newspaper, and what is it? I forgot the name of it, but he's reading a story. Like the camera is zoomed in close on this story, where it says that the Psi Corps is breaking with their charter by endorsing a presidential candidate. So there is an election going on in the background of Babylon 5, which will become important later in the series, like this season, right? The Psi Corps, they're supposed to be a nonpartisan organization, and they're blatantly like I believe the candidate that they're endorsing is basically the fascist, which again aligns them as the space Nazis in this series. So what I wrote down in my notes, I'm gonna alter it a little bit to make it less inflammatory, but let's look at it like this. The Psi Corps endorsing, I forgot who the character's name is, and the character will come up later in the season. But the Psi Corps endorsing that character is like the CIA endorsing George W. Bush versus Al Gore, basically. And I think that is an appropriate parallel because you know what happened when George W. got into office, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I know what didn't happen.
What didn't happen?
Oh, nothing. I got my presidents mixed up.
It's okay. It's cool. The it is easy to mix them up because they are roughly the same person from election to election.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that. There was one more thing that happened during this episode that made me go on a rabbit trail, and I wanna go down this pathway with you all. So remember how we would continue each episode. We're like, there's Sinclair putting himself in danger again. Okay, right. So there is something to this. So let's put all these pieces together, right? So in this episode, what are the guys that kidnapped Sinclair? What are they trying to do?
They're trying to They're trying to find out what his memories were from the time that he missed.
Right,
And they're
and
trying to prove that basically trying to prove that he what do you call it?
they're
Betrayed the
trying to,
humans.
yeah,
They're convinced that he betrayed us, so he's like they're just digging until they find what they want.
right. And something that happens before they abduct him, he's already having nightmares about the Battle of the Line.
Mm-hmm.
I know that this was not necessarily big in media during the time. Even they kind of talked about it, but Sinclair is suffering from PTSD, and all of those times in the past where we're like, there he goes charging in, no armor, no weapons. He's gonna fight the big bad guy by himself. He gets beat up, he gets shot, all of those things. He's coping with his PTSD. Mm-hmm. And I found this article that was explaining why people with PTSD often exhibit self-harming behaviors. Mm-hmm. And it is pretty interesting. And then when I look at the episode through this lens, it makes way more sense. This character is very well developed. He's not trying to be a hero. He's hurting the entire time. He's in pain. Mm-hmm. And he also doesn't know why. I mean, of course, you survive basically the extinction of humanity, but you were ready to sacrifice your life for for just the remote chance that you could buy other people who you don't know time to get away, right? That's the that's the that's the background that we are aware of with Sinclair. So this article says, it says self-harm usually takes the form of the following. All right. So what it's explained that self-harm is a complex behavior with many causes and, PTSD, trauma through that. But it is a way to express negative emotions, and it takes the form often in cutting, burning, pinching, biting, needle sticking, head hanging, and skin digging. Other behaviors of self-harm may not be on this list. However, any behavior intended to inflict pain upon oneself is broadly considered self-harm. Self-harm can provide some relief from emotional pain by directing one's focus to their self-inflicted bodily pain. So let's think about Sinclair's emotional pain. He survived the war. He watched in this episode. We see that he remembers watching someone that was really close to him die. Someone that's part of his squad, and he's kind of like he couldn't even save a person sitting next to him. Granted, that guy wouldn't listen to him,
Right?
but yeah, he's experiencing deep emotional pain, and then on top of that, so and we kind of get a sense of this with the last few episodes. The humans, even the ones that didn't fight in the war, they don't know why the Minbari surrendered.
Yeah.
But everybody has a sense like, man, we really lost that war. We got our butts kicked. We don't know why we're alive. And we don't have a sense of pride in ourselves, a sense of,
Conclusion. Like,
yeah.
they're lacking that closure, I guess. That's how I would see it. It's like we won, but we're not happy about how we won.
Right. Like we won, but did we win? It's a lot of unresolved emotion. Like not just a planet amount, a planet's population amount of unresolved emotion. You got people all over the system. They're like, yeah, we won the war, but at what cost? Right. And so
strings attached.
Right. And that's kind of what Babylon 5 is. It's the strings attached. And Sinclair is assigned the commander of the station. Mm-hmm. So now we get some pieces that are coming together. We basically lost the war. We were told that we won. There seems to be there's something hanging over the head of humanity, like a bigger, a greater power, a higher power that seems to be in charge of everything. Sinclair, who should have died, didn't. And suddenly he's the commander of this station that's supposed to be a symbol of diplomacy between all of the alien races. So now we're starting to see, like, with all of that kind of in view, you see why so many humans are like, we don't need to be messing around with no aliens. We almost like disappeared from the galaxy. Let's take care of ourselves. So, but anyway, they're saying that an article says, much like substance abuse and alcohol abuse, self-harm only offers a temporary escape from the emotional pain of those with PTSD. Mm-hmm. And the self-harm is a form of avoiding emotional pain. So there were some other characters too. So we talked about Sinclair. Ivanova, she didn't serve in the war, but she has, like, her character is emotional pain, like between her mother being taken away, her father dying in front of her, her former professor, former lover is a space Nazi
who also died in front of her.
I'm only laughing because that's a lot of bad luck.
Yeah,
that's not a cool thing to happen. But
and then she didn't even have a good relationship with her father until he died.
Oh, yeah. So we're looking at Babylon 5 is a sardine can of trauma in space. Garibaldi, he's also he fought in the war, but he wasn't on the line, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we have all of those.
Something right. So
we
don't know what yet. He got in trouble for something.
Yeah, that's right. So I took that long, like winding side rabbit trail, because we're starting to see the complexity that is built for us to understand in Commander Sinclair. He's not just a super macho, I'll save the day.
Mhm.
He's gritting his teeth and putting his head down, and he's hoping to feel some relief from his emotional pain. That's why he gets in fistfights with giant space monsters. So, so yeah, I would say this is a good moment to take a short break to say that we need to take our mental health very seriously. This, we like discussing sci-fi and fantasy and all this stuff, but it's a really good tool for us to pay attention to some real life situations that we need to take seriously. And even like I know in the 90s it was not in the media as much, but these days we know a little bit more about the type of mental and emotional trauma that can harm us. And we can, the more aware of it we are, the more that we can reach out for resources, which honestly, I'm gonna just say it like this: they should be free, but they're
Yeah.
not.
Yes, they should.
So I'm gonna open the floor for any thoughts that y'all have about the health and well being of Sinclair.
It makes sense that also like that pain that he feels goes along with like maybe there's a sense of incompletion. I mean, the whole situation with the war feels like a sense of incompletion, but he was the one like in the center of it. And now he's still in the center of it because he's responsible
Yeah,
for holding all these strings together.
yeah,
Yeah, it's unfair. Like he should really be, and you would think like so many hundred years in the future we would have better mental health, but then this was written like 30 years ago, so
it's probably a
or
better
aired.
depiction of the future than we've had in a long
Yeah.
time.
Well, I mean,
Like we're
also
not gonna.
it's kind of scary because a lot of people may backtrack. Some people think that, well, look at the situations with education. A lot of people think that certain things shouldn't be in the education, be children shouldn't be educated about, like
Yeah,
sex ed. Like, how many stories are there of girls who become women, for lack of a better term, and are terrified little kids and don't know what to do, what's happening to them, who to talk to, and like a few
yeah,
days later be like, oh, it's okay, you're supposed to do that. Like,
yeah,
if you're scared to tell them about something that's inevitable, that's supposed to happen, like the
yeah,
race, the what, critical
yeah.
race theory, like how do we teach
Shoot,
that? What are we supposed to teach that? Like,
not even critical race theory, just American history when it comes to acknowledging the role that race played. Not just talking about injustice, just like, hey, this person was a black person, this
right.
person was a white person, And Florida's like, don't say that.
It's like even just like make a curriculum that teaches kids to first of all like respect other humans, like in general. Like educators aren't even taught about neurodivergence. They just say like what the issues are, and if you see these issues, we got a place to stick them.
Right.
And
But
when
that's if you can pay for it, right?
some, under the Act for Peoples with Disabilities, the school system will pay for some services, and it's typically based on how that child's scores may affect the rest of the scores of the school, so they can get their money.
What? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
It,
So there's this TikTok creator, Crutches and Spice.
mhm,
She does a lot of work for disabled peoples,
mhm,
and she explains how like a lot of the shenanigans going on right now is basically discrimination against disabled people, and it's eugenics. It is intended to harm people with disabilities,
mhm.
and it's awful. And so I would say if you are interested, go check out Crutches and Spice. She's on TikTok and Instagram, I believe. So yeah, lots of good stuff.
Yeah. It's it's really cool how they touched on those things, but it's also like Sunday would normally mention, you're not really people aren't really getting it. Like they probably see the sci-fi and see the dramatic acting and the speech patterns that people would use in real life, and
Yeah.
They just see it for the dramatics. They don't see it for the story that's actually being told.
Right. And that, this is something that I'm working on for myself, understanding and becoming more literate of media, and that art is always saying something, even when you think that it's not.
Hmm.
It's saying something. Everything, entertainment is cool, but there's typically messages that are kind of finding their way, sprinkling their way through that stuff. Now,
Right.
it's not always good messages, but it's there.
Like some of the media that actually does like come straight out and say things. I guess like the Barbie movie that I haven't seen. It was pretty obvious to most people because they made it very plain and very simple, like a Barbie.
Yeah.
But like we said with the acting and the writing for this, they're trying to rewrite Shakespeare, a form of
Right.
art that has to be translated.
Yeah.
So it's very cryptic. And like I felt like with my story, I didn't want to be cryptic with that part. Some of the spiritual parts, like everyone talks very plain for whatever their region that I'm getting inspiration from. But if you want to actually put out a message, put the message.
Yeah.
And I think that's what loses a lot of people. It's almost like they're scared to put it out, but at the same time they really want to put it out. And even if you do, if you put it out, and like we saw with Barbie movie, if they agree, they're going to agree. And if they don't agree, they think the world is going to end because
Right.
people are trying to destroy it with their thoughts and opinions.
The arguments that and I haven't seen the Barbie movie either, but I've heard a lot of interesting takes on it. Some people have been watching it and analyzing it. And apparently, it has some really good stuff in there.
Mm-hmm.
But the critics of it are saying that the Barbie movie destroys men, and I'm like, what the heck are you even talking about?
Mm-hmm.
It's a movie about a toy.
Yeah, but
It's by Mattel.
I've seen some men critique it that like the message that they put out about men, where it's a contrast between the patriarchy and how in Barbie's world she is the hierarchy. She's the higher part of the hierarchy, but
Hmm.
on the human side in the real world, men are.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
contrast between that, they're like, well, we see women not wanting to be just the wanting to have power too, and that's the thing that they're so scared of, and they can't get past that. But then there's
Right.
men who see that and be like, yeah, women should be able to do stuff too, and men should be okay with women not needing to be under their foot.
And that's what I mean. There's like the what they call the manosphere
Mm-hmm.
and right wing
And their
pundits
pills,
and red pills.
whatever.
Anything that elevates women is seen as an attack on men, and I just don't wouldn't understand how you could be such a fragile individual.
Right.
But that does show that shows the fragility of patriarchy. Like patriarchy is very sensitive to anything that challenges, even if it looks in the way of its power. It gets scared. So it's like, okay, if you're so weak, why should you be in power?
Right.
I don't know. I'll get off of that horse.
No, well, like I was gonna say one thing, like, especially
Go
since
ahead. Go
your
ahead.
power only depends on someone else being lower than you, and you have to put them lower than you in order for you to be above them. So that's not real power, technically. But then in real life, socially, it is. But
Yeah, it's
it's
like
not
the perception of power. Yeah.
because that could
So
easily be changed with mindset. It's not like it's a natural thing to happen.
right. Yeah. Absolutely. Now, while you were saying that, a very unfortunate thought came to mind. There were like, I think there were three women in this episode, and one got shot and killed. Oh my god!
And she
Ivanova
wasn't
said
even
like,
security, right? She
no,
was
she
like a
was
medical
just
officer or something.
something. She just got blasted. Like those guys were shooting folks left and right.
Hmm.
Okay, to get back on track. Wait. Let me slow down. Nita, do you have any comments about any of that part of the discussion? I know we covered a whole lot.
Yeah. No,
Okay, that's
I am
cool.
very listening.
No problem. So, here's the other part of the episode. So we got Sinclair who has PTSD. He's suffering. He gets abducted, and he's hooked up to this chair, which that chair was the most ridiculous looking chair ever. Like when they were putting it together, I'm like, what in the world is this? But I think Cyberpunk in the 90s did better with chairs that hooked your mind up to computers, like Johnny Mnemonic. Oh, Total Recall was more 80s, wasn't it? But that
It's
did
like
something similar.
online somewhere. I
Yeah.
kind of felt like because they are smuggling in the pieces, that it could have just been like what we can get together. Like it's not going to be like the actual thing. It's like really just MacGyvered together. Especially since they
Yeah,
had
that's
to like steal an energy pod from the ship, which I thought was kind of interesting how they put that scene right before them showing him actually being in the
in the
the
Matrix.
in the Matrix, whatever. Yeah, because I
Yeah.
thought the first time I saw it, well, the first time I remember seeing it this time, I thought that the idiot had stole the energy pod that controlled Commander Sinclair's apartment, right? Or whatever communications he was trying to get to, until it was like the old whole ship. I'm like, did you
Yeah.
really steal the one that close to, like, you couldn't go down to where like people don't have homes and stuff to sneak one, because then you would have gotten away with it. But then when
I
it
think it
turns out
was
they didn't show how they got him there,
no, they
which
didn't. They
is
just showed he was just there. And I think it was shot that way on purpose to make you think like, man, these guys are dumb. And then suddenly you realize, oh, they got him. So they hook him up to this chair, and they're basically torturing him. But a part of the torture is him reliving the trauma of the Battle of the Line. And later in the episode, the objective is to break his mind and his sense of reality. And I'm like, yep, that's a torture chamber. But what was really frustrating was what sucks about it is he sees Garibaldi die twice. He see his buddy on the wing die a bunch of times. He's reliving his suicide run. So I can only imagine that he's also reliving those emotions too. And that has to be very deep and dramatic. And they don't say how many times he's done it.
right.
You know, we only see the one or two times, but it seems like they were there for hours.
Right.
And
It's
so he's reliving it over and over and over.
you said that, and I thought about Naruto and the jitsu. I'm not saying it right.
Jitsu.
Sasuke's brother has the jitsu where like he tortures Kakashi for like so many days, but it's only been like so many seconds in real life. Like,
Oh wow.
yeah,
Oh, that's crazy. That has another like dynamic to it. Like how long does it take for him to relive it? Like is it seconds, minutes, you know? Cuz like your mind like I'm not going to say that I know too much about this, but in your dreams you don't really have a sense of time. Not really.
no,
Like everything is so fluid and weird. But that's what's going on there. Outside of his head. Well, okay, the other thing was he's he's not only attached to the chair, but he's on all kinds of hallucinogens and drugs. Like he's tripping balls the entire time.
yeah,
And he's scared out of his mind. Scared, depressed, all of that. So that's a great torture method. No, it's not. It's terrible. It's there's no such thing as a good torture method. But Laren, one of my other notes was like when he's pulled into the mind prison or whatever, like the guy who's talking to him is very Shakespearean theatrical, and it this is like one of those points in Babylon 5 that reminds me of Star Trek, because Star Trek is made up of like all these theater actors, and of course that translates throughout all TV, but these guys, man, when they're like, hey, the spotlight's on you, they're like, I'm gonna take this chance and I'm going to eat every ounce of this scene.
and cinematically it was too. Because
Yeah.
especially when they show the Great Council coming in on them, I had to think about like Strange New Worlds, where when they meet a mysterious alien force that's not really there, it back in the day you saw like that it was dark and then it's just that one little circle or whatever little
Yeah,
shape
it's
they want
just
to
the
put the
little.
lights in. But where
Yeah.
like in the newer ones it's like this big open space where they could be anywhere and there's patterns and everything. They're actually in a
Yeah.
room and not in a void.
A black void.
The aliens are always in a black void.
Hey, that's how you save money on sets. Like, just
Yeah.
turn all the lights off, turn one light on. We're in a spaceship.
It was very theater. Like they were on stage.
Yeah.
Like we were sitting in the audience.
Theater of the mind. It's like a black box theater
Hmm.
where most of the scene you just have to imagine it because the character said so. Oh man. Sinclair he was told early that he was in a simulation, but they explained that the pain was real, the sensations were real, which is wild.
Hmm.
And then of course Sinclair has to figure out like, oh, there's feedback. Like he can feel pain too. So he's basically causing his captors pain. I think that's supposed to show like even under like in a crisis situation, Sinclair is always like sharp. He's always quick to think of an escape or a way to fight back. Which I mean, again, very 90s. You
Yeah.
don't get many characters who would just break down under pressure unless they're like secondary characters. We'll talk about Mr. Garibaldi later, like probably season 2, end of season 2, beginning of season 3. but yeah,
And he may just be a functional duress type person. Like instead of functioning, in alcohol, he's functioning in duress. Because
yeah,
that's most of his life. I mean, especially to compare it to, I know they're trying to portray him as having PTSD, but he's acting more like he has complex PTSD because
yeah,
he never gets rid of that fear, and he's literally living in the second stage of that fear. Whereas the fight was physical, now the fight is social and emotional and all the things that aren't physical.
yeah. And he he's often put in a situation where he has to figure out like somehow we got to get all these people to agree and work together or we about to go to war.
Hmm.
And we remember what happened last time.
We ain't gonna survive, basically. So he's basically he's at war now. It's just not a physical war. So him
Yeah.
going into battle physically is kind of an escape. And it kind of reminds me of I was reading more about with autism and overload. And some
Ooh,
adults just
okay.
live in overload all the time and can still like somewhat mask and function despite their overload. Like you don't want people to know that you're freaked out by certain sounds or textures and stuff, and you just live through it and you do what you have to do to survive. And he's doing it on a galactic level.
Like seriously. Which made me think like how cruel is Earth Force by taking like the most damaged person from the previous war and putting them in charge of stopping the next one.
And that's what we do though. Like we
Yeah,
honorate these
yeah.
people and give them positions and status instead of giving them mental health.
Yeah.
I mean, they're starting to like they have mental health available to them, but we're more likely to give them a pat on the back than to give them help or hugs.
Yeah. And again thinking about the economics of Babylon 5, it makes me wonder like can they afford counselors? I mean, they at the end of the episode, Sinclair does take down like a log of his memories from when they were pulled forward, but at the same time, it's like who does he have the opportunity to talk to?
Right.
So Picard had Counselor Troy, and she worked. I don't know if she ever had a day off because I mean, witnessing temporal anomalies, time paradoxes, the ship blowing up, an infinite amount of times in one point in space,
Mhm.
people time traveling backwards, forwards, sideways, people being turned from one type of alien to another alien. Like Starfleet having one counselor per ship, okay, that's cool. Y'all might need a couple more, but at least you can
Yeah.
go.
Because there were how many people on it? Maybe she was just a counselor for like the command.
It was a few
No,
hundred.
because she saw the what's his name? That was obsessed with the holodeck.
Oh, Barkley. Yeah.
Yeah, he was in command, or maybe his was just serious. I gotta think that there's more counselors on the ship. I mean, like I think about O'Brien's wife and her being the only teacher on the like. Is that all the kids on
Right.
here?
She cannot teach well, how many kids are on there? Because
I don't know.
I know the staff, like the crew is like 200 people, 200, 300 people, right? Or
Right.
is that too small? Am I thinking Voyager? I think Voyager was like
No, because wait, how
150.
many people is on on James's ship? Because he used to say it every episode. I have
Oh,
so
yeah.
many people on the ship. Like, every time somebody threatened to blow up the ship, he's like, "I gotta protect the 400 people on this ship." But the 400 down to the one Latin to whatever one digit. He knew exactly how many people
Jeez.
on that ship. Every time somebody's like, your ship's in danger now." But I gotta think that I know that Picard's ship was bigger than James's ship.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm sitting in front of a computer.
Yeah, I'm over here doing a search myself too. Of course, we're like jump. Okay.
Yeah, it's really off. But
Crew complement of 430 people.
oh, okay.
And which Enterprise is that? So I know. Okay, so for the Enterprise E, after the one that after the D, which blew up and was grounded, the Enterprise E had 650 to 700 people. That's a lot of people floating around in space.
Yeah, they need to have more than one counselor. And then when I think about it, like practically,
Yeah.
because she did have work hours. So, if I think about like a real therapist, like right now, even with online calls, well, it doesn't matter if it's online. You're only seeing so many people every hour that you're working. And then
Yeah.
if you at the most see people once a week, you're probably only seeing 5 clients at a time. Well, no, 5 times 5, 25 clients a week. You can get 25 people. I mean, unless they're going less than once a week, or they're only seeing people when they maybe she's the head of the counselor. Maybe like the doctor is the head of the sick bay. She's the head of the counseling, and there's other
All right.
counselors. There's
Yeah.
gotta
All right.
be.
There has to be other counselors because I'm looking at this. So the Enterprise D from the Next Generation had a crew complement of 907,
Hmm.
and it grew to 1012. So she needed a staff.
Yeah,
Either that or they let the computer do some of the work.
oh yeah, that's true. They could have
They had,
AI therapy,
yeah, Better Help uses AI,
but
which I
and
don't know how I would feel about that.
that's a huge contrast between Babylon 5 and Star Trek, where in Star Trek you have the empath helping people with their mental health, and then
Hmm.
and even though that was her choice, and it's not like all the counselors are empaths, but on Babylon 5, the empaths are affecting government and
Right.
commerce.
Okay. So
There's
that
such
was another
contrast.
point. That was another point that I was going to bring up. So the Babylon 5 plays around with the idea of a literal thought police in so many different ways. In this episode, you have, of course, the captors. They are searching through the mind of Sinclair. You see the reference to Psychor. Psychor, like the psychics, they really are only used for the interest of capitalists and business owners. They can change people's emotions. They can alter memories. They can do a lot of things, which at this point in the series we're not quite aware of yet. But we've seen this whole thing. They can do some crazy stuff. They are harming people. The psychics are used to cause damage, and then the one more aspect of this is the Minbari. The Minbari can alter people's memories.
Mm-hmm.
They erased Sinclair's memory. And at the end, you saw where, okay, Sinclair recognized Delenn, And it shows Delin, she's having a memory of what happened at the Battle of the Line. And they were like, look, he can never remember what happened. He can't come to knowledge of what happened. And if he does, you got to kill him. Now we know why Delin is there on the station.
Yeah.
She's basically a sleeper assassin. Like, she was sent there to watch Sinclair
Make sure
to
he
keep
don't mind.
Minbari secrets.
And that's probably why they had to send someone from the Great Council, because they're the only ones who know what they did to him and why.
Right.
They can't leave
Yeah.
that to somebody else.
And like, think of the implications. So Earth Force, if they find out that the Minbari can alter the memories of humans, they can of course, humans would become very, very scared, very xenophobic, and they would try to start up the war again. And then if just the way that Earth Force is, they want to figure out, like, how can we get that technology? How can we
Right.
how can we use it to change people's minds, right?
Yeah, because we've already seen them do that.
Right. And so there's a whole lot, like, everyone there's a lot of technology and special abilities dealing with altering the mind, altering emotions and memories, and it's all used to cause harm. You weaponizing everything. It's wild.
And it's
right,
always
so
to cause
go ahead.
harm to gain what they think is more power.
Yep.
Their perspective of power. I'm going to put it that way because I don't think that's real power. But
Yeah. I mean, these different factions are trying to figure out how to control people. The Minbari, of course, they surrendered, and it's really not even surrendered. They forfeited the war. The humans were losing. The Minbari forfeited because they were running the score up 21-0. I'm sorry.
humans can do nothing.
Couldn't do nothing. But they have a very particular perspective on what it means to protect themselves. They have a very well crafted reputation in the galaxy, and that comes up a lot more later in the series too. I'll drop this. There's a point where a character reveals, like, Minbari don't lie, and so the whole galaxy is like, the Minbari don't lie. So to wrap up this episode, there is a great another shootout with Sinclair. But remember, he's hopped up on all kinds of drugs, so he's blasting everybody. This dude is letting rounds go in a common area in the Zocalo. And who was it? Was it Dr. Franklin that was saying, like, he's under influence of all these drugs, so he doesn't know what he's doing?
Yeah, after examining the makeshift chair.
Yeah, which Dr. Franklin, quite possibly one of the best doctors in sci-fi. This dude knows a lot. He gets the answers. When everything calms down, when everything calms down, Sinclair, he's back at his quarters, and he's like, I remember everything. What he remembers, like, while he was still on hallucinogens, he remembered seeing Delin. He remembered seeing Delin in the chambers of the Great Council. He did say, like, while he was still on drugs, he was like, hey, I remember you. And then, later on, he kind of downplayed it. But he's like, yeah, she was there. It was her face that I saw. I need to figure out what it is they don't want me to remember. Which is crazy. Like, you're looking in the eye of the person that erased your memories, and you got to be like, yeah, I don't know this stuff. But they somehow had power to remove the memories, and you got to try to figure out, okay, what is it that I know that they're keeping from me? That whole thing has to also be pretty traumatic.
Yeah, and that's an existential crisis. Because it changes everything he knows. Like, he thought he just blacked out, but now he knows that something that whole time I was up doing stuff, and it affected, like, a part of the galaxy.
And think of Delin's character up until now, except for, like, so let's ignore all of the secrets, the little hints that she has secrets. She's, like, one of the most empathetic and, like, caring characters. She goes to bat for everybody that needs help, and come to find out, she's basically responsible for torturing Sinclair. Like, she's a war criminal,
Right.
So,
I ran into a spoiler while doing research for my galactic tea. That
ooh,
it contrasts that, but it also kind of goes with it. It's like, I don't want to say what it is, but in contrast, she's supposed to murder. She's there to murder him if he
yes,
finds out.
right, yeah, exactly. She's the failsafe.
Right. Mhm.
So, so
Well, we
now
need
you
to
see,
remember that when we get to the future
yeah,
and find out.
yeah, yeah. But I do remember earlier episodes like Delin is up to something. Delin is up to something. She be popping up in weird places,
Hmm.
and you have to remember in those past episodes she always shows up where Sinclair is, always.
Hmm.
So
And
now we
she
know why.
interferes somehow. It's like,
Yes.
you're a diplomat. Why don't you just go back to your quarters and be safe until it's time for another meeting? But she's got to like stick her
She
nose
out
in
there.
and put information in and change the narrative with what she says.
Yep.
Even with the
Yep.
questions that the conversation that she had with the doctor. Like, why did you have that conversation? Because you up to something.
Yeah. So we're here at the end of the episode, and remember this. Like I said, this episode didn't have a whole lot going on, but it was character development and some lore building, like some breadcrumbs, all of that. Now we understand more about like what's wild. We understand more about Delin than almost any other character because of this episode. She was in 2 scenes.
Yeah, it was very deep, but very like it's like a puddle that's like really deep.
Yeah. So, any last thoughts or impressions on this episode before we get out of here?
No, I think that was my impression, my last impression, that it's very small but very deep, enormously deep.
Yeah. How about you, Nita? I know you didn't get to see all of it, but from what we shared, are there any thoughts, any questions? What is your impression?
Yeah, I am wondering if it was probably a good idea I missed it because I have PTSD, and then just hearing how the cap was affected, I was feeling very uncomfortable and having a hard time staying in the moment. But
Yeah.
perhaps like maybe earlier in the day, I can watch it and pay attention to it, but probably for the best, not for bed.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. Well, these shows, like I said, they are very melodramatic. It's the 90s style. All right, I'm gonna share this story with y'all because it's funny to me. I was watching, this was during my last watch through of the whole series. This was like earlier this year. And I had fallen asleep. And it was on one episode where Delin was just screaming her head off. And I'm dreaming, but for some reason, the voice that I heard screaming was Sunday's voice. And I just shoot out of bed. I'm looking around for her. She is nowhere to be found. I'm like, what happened? What happened? What happened? What happened? I don't see the dogs. I'm like, what happened? And then I'm like, what was that noise? I go back to my computer. There's Babylon 5 in credits. I was like, oh, that's what I heard. I mean, I was outside searching around the house. I was looking and I was really like messed up. So
Hmm.
like even the way that they portray a lot of things, of course they're trying to get away. They're trying to get across some intense emotion. These actors are, they're decent at their jobs, but yeah, don't let that slide into your subconscious. It might give you nightmares.
Need help with that.
Hey, I learned to just not fall asleep with the TV on because that active
Hmm.
subconscious there.
With
So
the
Hmm.
TV on is very important. I thought it was I just learned not to fall asleep. I learned to embrace insomnia.
I've been doing this thing where if I watch something like pretty serious, especially if they start like this is going to be disturbing, blah blah blah, or if I do just feel disturbed from it, I have to like find something else lighthearted, like some comedy or something to
yeah,
uh to watch before I go to bed, so that
it's like a
that's
palate
not,
cleanser.
yeah, a palate cleanser, most definitely.
Yeah. All
I
right.
mean,
So
Watch or try not
uh,
to laugh.
no, I understand. So we're gonna wrap this up. So this wasn't a very eventful episode, but it centered some important characters and revealed some secrets. And now we have the rest of the season to kind of see how it plays out. The Lens secrets, they're not completely revealed, but Sinclair is aware. But Delenn is like, does he know? Because if he knows, you know what I gotta do. So, as we end, we're gonna end with the question: is Delenn gonna pop Sinclair? Is Sinclair gonna rat out Delenn? Tune in next time. All right, we're gonna get out of here. This was I don't even know what episode we are, but in the sky full of stars. For this week of Voices in Hyperspace, I'm Damian, aka Legendary Black Lion. You can find me at Legendary Black Lion on all social media platforms.
I'm Mel Asylum. You can find me at Mel's Rebellion on all the social medias that I'm on.
I'm Nita. I go by Nita Painter. I'm the black one.
Oh my goodness. Yes. We also have a TikTok for Voices in Hyperspace. So go ahead and find at Voices in Hyperspace on TikTok and enjoy. We have officially launched. We have our YouTube. You can find our podcast there. I am in the process of making sure that we can get on some of the bigger podcast platforms. So be looking out for that. By the time you get to this episode, we should be done. We should be there. So make sure you like, subscribe, leave comments, leave ratings. I don't care if you leave us 1 star. You know, leave us that 1 star. Talk bad about us. It's great. Great engagement. All right. Well, thank you all, and we'll catch up with y'all next week.
Bye.